Are you a self-storage owner or operator looking for service providers to help at your facility? Well, the Storage Business Owners Alliance, also known as the SBOA, has you covered. The SBOA is a premier online hub for connecting self-storage owners and operators to industry-leading products and service providers. We provide one-stop shopping for your business with exclusive offers to save time and money. At the SBOA, we believe by coming together, we help owners and operators grow revenue, gain purchasing power, reduce expenses, improve efficiencies, and increase profitability. We also offer many resources such as our conferences and self-storage unlock webinars to help self-storage owners and operators gain the knowledge needed to become more competitive in the industry. To become an SBOA member or to find out more information, please visit www.thesboa.com today. We can't wait for you to join the Alliance.
Good afternoon and happy Thursday. Happy St. Patty's Day, everyone. My name is Jessica Johnson. I'm the Vice President of the Storage Business Owners Alliance, and I'm so happy to be with you all today, bringing you another episode of Self-Storage Unlocked. I am recording from beautiful sunny Florida. I am sitting outside today, so I apologize for the distractions, but I won't be hosting today as we have a guest moderator, which I'm so excited to introduce to you in a few minutes. So today's content is all around marketing budgets, how to properly plan for marketing budgets and marketing plans to help you in your facilities out there. So before we get started, I wanted to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. The comment section is where we want you to engage with us. Please drop us your name and where you're from. If you have any questions for the speakers today, please feel free to ask those questions in the comment section so we can answer those for you. If we run out of time and we aren't able to answer, we will certainly send you an email with the responses to those questions. We also like to ask poll questions to learn more about you and your business. You'll be able to find those in the poll section. So please go ahead and take a few minutes and start answering those poll questions for us. On the left-hand side of the menu, there is an expo area. All of the presenting companies that are here today, you can go learn more about their services and products. And if you want to get in touch with them, all of the links will be there. We can't put on these type of events without our sponsors and our help from our vendor partners out there. So give me 2 quick minutes. I want to share a quick video with you on 2 of our sponsors from today, StoreTrack and Storable.
StoreTrack is the leading provider of market data to the self-storage industry worldwide, offering solutions to owners, operators, developers, and investors with crucial data needed to make important day-to-day decisions in self-storage. StoreTrack for owners and operators offers current competitive rate data, historical rates and trends, inventory and supply change, price volatility, marketing information, and scheduled reports. StoreTrack for brokers, developers, and investors offers supply data, competition analysis, historical rate trends, inventory insights, demographic data, and plan developments. To learn more, please visit www.storetrack.com. For pricing, please contact Jody Burks, Business Development Manager of StoreTrack, by email jody@storetrack.com or 727-222-5774.
Get the power to do more with Sparefoot Marketplace. More reach, more leasing, more toward your bottom line. Storable helps operators do more with the most powerful technology in self-storage. Learn more at storable.com/do more.
Huge shout out to those companies. Also, huge shout out to Absolute Storage Management and Storage Asset Management as they are here with us today as well. So without further ado, I'm so excited to bring up my guest moderator for today, the one, the only, Grace.totty from Absolute Storage Management. Hi, Grace.
Hey there, Jessica. Hey, viewers. How are you guys?
I hope everyone's doing well. Happy St. Patty's Day. I don't have any green on, so I expect some pinches when I see everybody at ISS for not holding up my end of the bargain today. And Grace, I'm so shocked people did not guess who my guest moderator was when I said she is super, super, super Southern and super, super, super sweet. I thought they would figure it out real quick, but maybe they're confusing you with Jane Sauls or some of our other sweethearts out there in the South. So,
or they just know that I'm really not that sweet.
Yes, you are. All right, Grace, give us a rundown of who you are, how long you've been around, and what brought you to the storage industry.
Yeah, happy to. Really thankful to be here today. I am wearing a winter sweater because it's the only thing I have that's green. And I sit in Shreveport, Louisiana. So mid-March in Shreveport, you can guess it's hot. So I got my sweater on to make sure I don't get pinched, but I don't know what's worse, being hot or getting a pinch. But as Jessica said, both, yeah. As Jessica said, I work with Absolute Storage Management, which is one of the third-party management companies that specializes in self-storage in our industry. We focus on revenue maximization and really being that flexible REIT alternative for our owners. I started with Absolute in 2012, 10 years ago, coming up on 10 years this June, I believe. And started in operations. I was actually the company's very first intern, which is just kind of a fun fact, and have really started in operations, working alongside CEO, worked both in the field on the property side and then in our corporate office doing a lot of analytics there, and then shifted into marketing about 5 years ago, and that's just become my home. I love it. I lead the department and really just excited to talk today about some marketing pieces and budgeting and how to shift and change. And again, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Well, thanks for joining me. Honestly, I get pooped moderating and hosting these, even though we only do them every other week. It's a lot of work and coordination on the back end. So I'm very thankful when I have guest moderators. So thank you. So Grace, I'm going to jump off. I'm going to let you introduce your panel and then we're going to get started.
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. So we've got a really exciting panel today that I just get the honor to introduce you to. Jessica put everybody together, so another shout out to her. But I'll welcome the panelists up kind of one at a time and let them introduce themselves to you. So first of all, we have ALISON DEJAEGER, who is the president of List Self Storage and StoreTrack. So ALISON, why don't you tell the viewers here a little bit about yourself?
Hi. Yeah. I started about 7 years ago with SBOA when SBOA and List Self Storage were sister companies. And then about a year and a half ago, List was bought by StoreTrack. And so now we have the data component. So I do feel like I have this really unique benefit of having worked on SBOA with the the owners and operators and kind of learning the operational side of things, and then also dealing with the investors, developers, brokers on the List Self Storage side. So I feel like I'm just like I know a little bit about the lot.
That's awesome. What's that saying? A jack of all trades, master of none.
That's me. That's exactly it.
Awesome. We're excited to learn some of your trades today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Next on the panel is Charles, but he goes by Needham, and he's the manager of SEO over at Storable. So Chuck, why don't you give us a little update about yourself?
Hey, Grace. Yeah, thanks for having us. My name is Charles Needham. I've been doing SEO now for about 17 years, digital marketing for about 17 years as well. I've been with Storable for about 2.5 years, but I've basically always been in sort of blue collar type industry. So yeah, thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to talking and meeting with everyone, and looking forward to having a good chat.
Good stuff. And you get extra brownie points for wearing a shamrock today. Congratulations.
This is an incidental hat. This just happens to be my lucky hat. I'd be wearing it if it was Halloween. So.
Oh, that is funny. That is funny. Well, good stuff. We're excited to hear all about SEO, and hopefully we can debunk some of the mystery around SEO for us today. Cool. Next on the panel is going to be James.Reid, who is the CEO and owner of Co4 Storage based out of St. Louis. So James, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so most of my career, I was actually a landscape contractor, and I had a fire at one of my nurseries, and that propelled me into the storage because I had to use storage to basically, there was a few things that survived the fire that my coach allowed me to store at his storage facility at no cost for a year. And I was there, I realized storage is a way to help people, but also I counted his doors, and $100 a door, there's also really good marketing and money to be made in the industry. So that kind of got me into the storage industry. And now I've been in the business since 2015. We have about 1,300 units between our two stores, and we get a couple under contract. But I kind of do things outside the box when it comes to local marketing and outreach. So definitely looking forward to kind of sharing some out of the box ideas on our marketing.
That's awesome. James, I think you cut out there, but I am super excited to hear more about how your catastrophe turned into kind of the successful new career for you. And I have seen some of those creative marketing, local marketing things that you've done. If you haven't looked at Storco Storage, their Facebook, there's a lot of fun videos of James on that. So check that out if you haven't already. And then last but certainly not least is Melissa Stiles, my friend, who is the Vice President of Marketing and Sales for Storage Asset Management, which is based in Pennsylvania. So Melissa, go ahead and tell the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Grace. So I am the Vice President of Marketing and Sales for Storage Asset Management. I've been with them for 8 years. I started as sort of the sole marketing manager when we had just a little under 40 management contracts. And today we have 465 and operate in 34 states. So super excited to share some of the knowledge that I've learned throughout the years from going from sort of a smaller company to a good sized company with a number of locations. And we solely manage, we do not own any of the facilities. So that's what makes us very unique.
That's awesome. Yeah, Melissa, you're just such an asset to the industry and an asset to this panel today. And I'm just super excited to have you and all of your property experience. I didn't realize that you started when the portfolio was only 40 strong, and now to have seen it go through such growth. Super excited for your feedback today.
Thanks, Grace. You're so sweet.
Absolutely. No, I'm not sweet. Remember, I'm not the Southern sweet one. Well, as Jessica's brought everybody here onto the panel so you can see everybody at the same time, I wanted to invite you all as viewers to join in on a little icebreaker. So a question for you as the audience is, how much tenure do you see on this panel? So between the 5 individuals here, I want to know, what do you think our combined tenure is? And if you're listening to some of those intros, you heard a couple of years, so maybe you can do some quick math. But go ahead and chat in what that total years of experience you think is. And to encourage your participation, a $10 Amazon gift card is on the line. So make sure you get in there, chat in what you think the combined experience is, and win a gift card. As Jessica said in the beginning, we've got some poll questions that were on, I think she said the right hand of your screen, although you can correct me if that's wrong. Those poll questions are really important for the panel to understand you. So if you haven't already, please take 5 seconds to go in and answer some of those, specifically around kind of what best describes you. Are you a current owner? Are you looking to own? Investor, vendor, partner? What is the average number of units in your facility? So kind of there's some different size ranges there. That would be really helpful to help guide the conversation today. Along with that is how many facilities you own. Do you utilize a marketing budget plan? That'll be really cool to hear as we talk through our answers and our conversation today. And then one of them is also just, are you going to attend the ISS show next month? We're less than 30 days away. So just interested to see who's going to come through on that. All right, I don't have visibility to the poll, so we will actually just go ahead and jump into our conversation. And then if I see those responses come through, I'll stop us and get there. So we know that you are here to learn about developing marketing budgets and those plans. And like I said, Jessica's really kind of organized a great panel here to talk through that. So let's just jump in. If you guys are ready for it, buckle up. The first part of this topic is just going to be developing a budget. So that's kind of phase one, starting the year with a plan, or if you haven't already got a plan in place, it's March. I heard a statistic once that said March 17th is like the best day to start a marketing budget. That's a made up statistic, but better late than never. So let's hear from these guys on what do you do? What do you review? What do you consider when you're creating your budgets and your plan? And if it's okay with everyone, I'd love to start with Melissa here to hear what they do at Storage Asset Management.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Grace. So we look at a couple factors when it comes to determining that specific property's marketing budget. Historical data. So what has been the return of investment on our previous marketing activities? So you kind of understand what's working, what's not, and where you want to put money towards. The occupancy of the facility, along with maybe the geographic and competition in that area as well. If you have upcoming competition coming in the pipeline that your facility is located at, that might cause you to shift some money or put more money into the marketing to be able to lease up your store before that one opens. So really, geography, competition, historical data, and your occupancy are the most important factors that we look at.
That's awesome. Thanks, Melissa. We do something really similar with that, where we look at occupancy and owner goals to see how aggressive or how maybe not as aggressive we need to be with marketing budgets. Good stuff. Chuck, I'm just interested, what do you look at from an SEO perspective? What are some considerations to include in a budget? And you, sir, are on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes. So yeah, I mean, much like regular marketing, this is a little bit more true in SEO as well. But really, it ultimately comes down to what your competitors are going to be doing versus what you are willing to do. So if you're in a competitive market, maybe you're surrounded by national brands, maybe you're surrounded by REITs, whatever the case, everyone's essentially fighting for the same position to catch their customers' attention. And this is especially true in SEO when there's, a very obvious list of, how you rank next to your competitors. So if you want to compete, first and foremost, you should expect and you should be working on a marketing budget and strategy that, even if it's not as expensive as your competitors, at least brings you up to par with what they are doing. The second thing I like to think about is also thinking about your pipeline when you're doing these marketing budgets. One of the sort of pitfalls I think I see a lot of newer storage facility owners make is when they're thinking about their storage budgets, they're usually approaching it as the very last thing. And so they'll try to think about their marketing budgets as in, what am I spending now versus what am I going to be getting back this month? The great thing about storage, though, is that it really lends itself to the recurring revenue model, which is tremendously profitable. So I like to think about these also in terms of pipelines. So, let's say hypothetically, you're starting some sort of a digital campaign, SEO, PPC, or something like that. Let's say your average customer stays 11 to 12 months. On average, will pay about $50 per month. If you're able to get just 2 new leads that you wouldn't have otherwise consistently for a year, you've developed basically a 24-month pipeline that's going to be worth a little bit more than $20,000. And if you're doing a single SEO location or a single PPC location, you could be spending, maybe a few $100 to get that. So it can be really, really profitable. So make sure you're thinking about not just these months' numbers, but think about sort of the pipeline of your customer in general. But then also you have to be cognizant of what your competitors are doing, and you have to be willing to fight them where they are as well too.
I love that. Chuck, you said something when in the beginning of your answer there, and it was all around knowing what your competitors are doing.
Sure.
How do you know what your competitors are doing from an SEO perspective?
Yeah, no, this is where really I have the sort of philosophical opinion that SEO, there really is no such thing as sort of SEO in a simple answer. SEO really is everything about your brand digitally kind of coming together to form a picture, basically. And so when you're doing this sort of thing, you really have to put on your investigator hat, get out your magnifying glass and start looking for clues. A helpful way is to look at your competitors' websites, see what they're doing, what kind of content do they have blogs, what sort of a content schedule are they on, are they doing any sort of social media posting. You can use a variety of different tools to see what your competitors may be doing with pay-per-click. You can also see this with AdWords or just doing some Googling yourself. So really, it really just comes down to knowing sort of where your customers are, looking for them, and then trying to find, using those tools, sort of what they're doing and being prepared to, if you can't meet them, at least sort of start working to that effect.
I love that. I don't think I've ever heard SEO described as painting a picture, and that's a really easy, very applicable reference to it. So thanks for sharing that. Honestly, that's great. Even if that's the only thing we learned today, thanks, Chuck. We can go ahead and wrap it up. Just kidding. All right. Allison, are there any things that you want to just make sure to know kind of as you're looking to create a marketing budget? What are your considerations?
Yeah, I mean, we're a little different because, we're B2B. So we consider like the trade shows part of our marketing. As an owner operator, it's probably not going to be the case. But I love numbers. I feel like my 28-year-old self would give my 38-year-old self a wedgie for saying that, but here we are. I think and especially for marketing, when there's a lot of ambiguity there, and if you're a new owner, I would say go quarterly at first and be prepared to just audit on a frequent basis, go back and just kind of look at seasonality. I think is really important. You're probably going to market on a little bit of a different median when all the college kids are moving out. In terms of moving season in general. But, looking at just different levers that you can pull. And then I learned this, so I'm stealing it from Melissa and Grace, you too, but just consider the cost to convert and track everything, know the source of everything to the best degree that you can. And that way I think you'll just be more successful.
That's awesome, Allison. I think that kind of, we can steer the conversation into that actual calendar. So if you're putting together this marketing plan, you usually think of a budget as a 12-month plan or strategy. What are some of the things that you guys maybe turn on or turn off? Because marketing is consistent of these online levers, and then there's also these local levers. And so what are some of those things that you might turn on in Q1 and then turn on or off in Q2? Like if we were to segment the calendar out, what would be some suggestions for our listeners?
Yeah, sorry, James, I wasn't sure if you were jumping in there. But for the levers, the online aggregators, we saw the Sparefoot Marketplace, using that when you know that you're going to have that move out from college students then, but not using it when you know that you're going to have a busy season, is using your budget very smartly and making sure that you're using all of your resources correctly. The other part, Google Ads, looking at those and when you need to use them and when you don't. And then, locally, there might be, if you're in a lease-up facility, it might be that you need to do a local event, or you need to really raise that brand awareness within your community. So you might be doing that, versus if you're highly occupied, you might not have to do all of that brand awareness, but just really concentrating on one-on-one relationships within the community. But things that I think that you should be doing regardless is, Chuck talked about SEO. SEO always should be done no matter what occupancy level you're at. You need to rank well. At some point, you're going to need a rental. So just ensuring that you continuously do that. And it's something that doesn't happen overnight, right? We know that SEO doesn't just happen. You do one thing and it does it. It's something that continuously needs to build. And there's so many different things with the Google algorithms that come out, that something that should always be worked on, along with, your reputation management, getting the reviews and answering the reviews as well. So all of those pieces are something that needs to be continuously done, whether or not, but then you do have some room to pull those levers if you need to scale back.
Awesome. Thanks for that. James, I'm super eager to hear from an owner's perspective, what are you looking for in that marketing budget? And also because I know how involved you are with your social content, how do you plan out that calendar? What does that process look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Grace. So a lot of it's got to do, we try to see there's certain events happening in our market in a local reach perspective. And if there's a way that we can tag onto that with different themes throughout that community, where when you're posting something on social media, others are
James might have to finish that answer in the comment section. Unfortunately, I was super eager to hear that from his owner perspective. Let's go back because Melissa, you started us on a track that, oh, James, are you back?
I'm sorry. I'm not having the best connection today. Can you hear me now?
We can. Yep. You pick up where you left off. Go ahead.
Yeah, fantastic. So we try to do a local approach. So if there's certain activities that are happening in our community, I try to do certain videos to reflect that. So more people share and like. So more of a more organic approach, but also seasonality. We do things about gifts during Christmas, funny things about, hiding presents so your kids don't see it. We also have these like Frisbees that we throw out in the spring in people's yards. They have to pick it up. They're not going to throw it away. And it says Storco storage on it. So you kind of do like a local approach to kind of be out of the box thinkers, just to be kind of more of a brand awareness, especially when you're leasing up a store, you're just trying to be found and known. So you have to think outside the box with that perspective. Even like having Girl Scout stand at your facility, getting people to drive by, stop, get cookies, and just more organic traffic is what we try to achieve here locally.
I love the idea of throwing Frisbees in somebody's yard. I don't know if the HOA would like that, but I think that's really creative and a great way to stand out. And you're right, they're less likely to throw away that Frisbee than they would be a postcard or something that they received. Yeah. Great tip already. Good stuff. I love that. Is kind of that local marketing concept, James, that you're doing, where it's just heavy on the awareness and location, kind of letting the local community know where you are in the product that you have. Is that something that you do regardless of occupancy? Is that one of those evergreen items that you include in all of your property budgets?
Yeah, so all of our properties have been either development or conversions.
I am going to fill in as James's internet.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. You were saying that all of your portfolio has started from a lease up stage.
Yes. So we've always been in a market where we're trying to grow brand awareness. So we think more of an organic perspective. We're still doing all the SEO. We're tracking everything, trying to learn the market as well as we can to be competitive and outperforming our neighbors.
Good stuff. So right now, what I hear you say is it's included in all of your property budgets, but potentially would be reevaluated as the time goes on and your occupancy grows.
That's exactly right, Grace.
Cool stuff. All right. Well, we know that those budgets, just like James is saying, local marketing, heavy focus on kind of those awareness campaigns. But as your occupancy grows and as those different benchmarks, you hit different benchmarks in your property, budgets need to be changed because it's not a set it and forget it project. So panel, how do you make those adjustments? At what point do you switch gears or adjust the budget? And if you'll give me 1 second, let me hop on over to the comment section. It sounds like we have one question here from Chris Long. So from Chris is asking the panel, has anyone had a successful Facebook group ad or a local community post? It's typically free and reaches a wide audience. So anybody who's using Facebook ads.
We use a little bit of Facebook ads, but a lot of it, there's actually a group page around like the community, like O'Fallon, Missouri. There may be 100,000 people in this group. It's all about what's happening in that city. So you can post within that group organically and drive traffic to your facility, really at no cost other than some time.
Melissa, I know you guys also use a lot of Facebook ads. How do you tailor them, and what ways do you use Facebook?
Yeah, so we do some ads, and mostly they're for lease up properties or a change of brand, a lot of brand awareness. With Facebook's privacy settings changing, it was really cool. 5 years ago, you could target someone who had that intent for storage, right? If they searched divorce lawyers or a realtor, you could target them with a self-storage ad. With those factors going away, now you're kind of geographically targeting again. And so we found success for using them for brand awareness. The kind of downside is in those local groups, they don't accept a lot of businesses. So we're kind of relying on some of the managers to maybe post in there and share the page within there, which isn't typically something that we ask or have a requirement of our store manager. So we encourage it, but we can't require it. But when we do have that manager post within that local community, it seems to go over really well.
That's awesome. I'm also just curious, any of you guys in Storable and ALISON, I'm sorry, this is mostly geared towards Melissa and James, but are you guys using Facebook Marketplace at all to try to advertise your units there as well?
So we did push, sorry, Chuck, we did push some of the ads into Marketplace, but haven't seen, much more success than a regular Facebook ad.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think a lot of, at least to me, in my opinion, for sort of social marketing, especially in the storage industry, is that it's almost more akin to traditional billboard advertising. So we focus primarily on SEO and PPC just because you can really quickly drum up some conversion. Those numbers are really clear. I do believe we are sort of mulling over some ideas about doing some more stuff socially. But when it comes to stuff like Facebook, I really think that those ads and those sort of outreaches, they're really great. They're good. They're great for community development, things like that. But it's more akin to sort of the older school, like billboard. You're not necessarily going to get someone who's ready to convert immediately, although there are certain things you can tweak to sort of make that more likely than less likely. But generally speaking, it's about making sure that brand repetition is there. When they think about storage, a week from now, what are they going to remember? They're going to remember seeing your beautiful brand, your logo on Facebook. That could make them lead to a search. That could lead to all kinds of things. So it's not something that we do at Storable just yet, but I definitely think that that's something we're thinking of and might be able to provide some solutions on later.
Yeah, to Chuck's point, if you have a small marketing budget, I would much rather concentrate on the SEO Google ads, because then you're actually capturing someone with intent versus Facebook, you're just building brand awareness.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think from a consumer perspective, the first place I would go would be Google. I wouldn't use social media for anything more than stalking ex-boyfriends, candidly. I think that is, it's not really, I don't think it really gets that same kind of reach. And I like the analysis of the billboard, because you can't create demand for storage. So it really is just being at the right place, the right time. And right now that search engine primarily is,
right.
Maybe so.
Yeah, I think, Melissa, you hit the nail on the head, and that's a lot of the strategy that we use at Absolute is how much budget do we have, and what's the purpose of that budget, what's the goal of the property, and then also recognizing Facebook has a place, Yelp ads has a place, even Groupon may have a place, but we tier it on and then we tier it off based on what that property needs, and the tiers are based on intent, which is exactly what you said. It is there are some great aggregators in the industry. PPC through Google and even PPC through Bing are great higher intent platforms than, say, a Facebook, which is an online billboard, just like Chuck said. Great stuff. It's important too. Like I said, Facebook has a place. Google put out a study probably 2 years ago now that said a storage user has to have experienced your brand 7 times before they are comfortable enough to actually convert with you. And so some of those 7 times are experienced through SEO and that profile or picture that's painted online. Some of them can be through Facebook ads. And so again, Facebook has a place, but if we're talking about budgets, I would encourage everybody to implement the things that are needed for the strategy that you need. So if awareness is what you need, Facebook's a great place. If rentals is like a high return on investment is what you are hoping for, then use some of those higher intent strategies as well. Great conversation, you guys. I love this. Love this so much. So let's jump back to kind of that next order of business, which is we've got this idea, we kind of know what these strategies are, we've got our budget in place, or we've identified what levers we're going to turn on at the beginning of the year. When do you evaluate those levers, and when do you change them, and what does that change look like? So kind of two questions there. James, do you want to go first in answering that? At what point
sure, absolutely. So, yeah, with our lease up stores, it's almost always on, but we definitely put some additional fuel in the spring and summer because we know that everybody's being more competitive. It's when the moving season's hot and moving, so we'll allocate more funds during that season. But with us being a lease up stores, it's always a higher priority to keep the flow of those leads coming through.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much.
No worries.
Melissa, when do you evaluate? What does an adjustment look like?
Yeah, I was going to say to James's point, it depends on the life cycle of the property, right? So if you're in a stabilized property or if you're in a development property, you might be evaluating it at different points on, tracking what's working, what's not working. And also who you're competing with in your geography location, I think also plays into that as well. If you're in a tertiary market, you might have thought that you needed, more ad spend, but really your SEO is getting you the traffic that you need organically. But I think, you look at it and you can adjust it. Again, if you're in a lease up, maybe you're doing that monthly. If you're in a more stabilized property where you have that historic data, maybe it's, if it's, every 6 months or yearly, if you're comfortable, but taking in consideration and when you're planning your budget, that seasonality as well.
Chuck, I've got a question for you from the SEO perspective.
Sure.
How do you know when it's the best time? I mean, Melissa and James just said when the time is right, add paid ads on top of the organic traffic, but it might be that your property is already getting enough organic traffic. So from an SEO perspective, do you have any kind of guidance that you can share with everybody on when SEO might need extra juice from paid ads, or what metrics is identifying that SEO is performing at the top of its game?
Sure. Great question. So I actually get this question kind of often, and the advice I give my clients pretty consistently on this is, of course, someone coming on, especially a newer facility, they're going to have a limited budget. So I'll oftentimes say, I'm obviously biased. I think SEO is the best. Nevertheless, I'll say, hey, let's get you on SEO. And then let's also run a limited PPC budget in the meantime. So as we're spinning up your SEO, as your visibility is increasing, as we're developing that sort of lead pipeline organically, which is going to take a little bit of time. SEO is typically a medium to long-term strategy. In the short term, we'll get your PPC activated. We'll run a limited budget, and we'll run that. And we'll basically put the idea in the client's head that, as their SEO improves, as their organic visibility improves, typically the SEO fee, no matter who you're working with consultant-wise, is usually a flat fee, that your cost per conversion on the SEO side is going to get lower and lower as time goes on. And then you can start pulling back PPC whenever you can start affording to do so. But I got to tell you, 9 times out of 10, once we get to that point where clients originally intended that they're going to start pulling back from PPC, they're now completely happy and comfortable with the pipelines they've developed. It's usually a confidence issue. So, 12 months down the line, they say, okay, well, this was originally the point where we anticipated we actually were going to start pulling back from PPC, but, we've got this organic lead pipeline. Maybe we spend $1 to make 10. We've got this PPC lead pipeline. Maybe we're spending $1 to make 5 or $1 to make 7 or whatever the number may be, but there's still juice there. And so I think a lot of times clients will sort of start with that, sort of working their way sort of through a budget carefully. But then once they get there, they realize these pipelines are hot. And really, they will oftentimes make a turn and instead of saying, hey, let's pull back from some of this stuff, they'll usually go in and say, hey, let's actually double down. Let's actually do some more experimental stuff with PPC. Let's see where we can start squeezing some of these stones that we hadn't really thought about. So it's actually a really kind of an interesting thing where I think a lot of times people will use PPC at the beginning of an SEO campaign to sort of supplement that traffic. But by the time they get to the end, they realize, wow, both of these are working great. I'd really just be spiting my face to cut off my nose here if I were to shut off PPC or SEO like that.
Yeah, that's a great perspective too. And once again, how they can help one another. Absolutely. Again, with the Google statistics, I promise I don't work for Google, but at some point Google said if you're running both at the same time, both organic and paid, and you're both on the first page, which means you have a proper and performing SEO plan in place, then your ad it's something like 5 times more likely. So it's not just twice as likely because you're on there twice. It's exponentially more likely to be clicked on.
And that's actually a pretty huge thing that you just said. It's actually kind of a perspective change that I'm seeing in SEO. I've been seeing for a few years. And that's the change which you just described, is really people are starting to now sort of view search engine result pages as almost like a form of real estate. It's a place where your business lives and is seen by people, your customers, your competitors are going to be there also. So to your point, and this is part of the reason I think clients will get to the end of their time period they thought of, and they'll decide, hey, let's actually keep PPC, let's keep SEO. Because once they get there, they realize if they can take up a prime spot in PPC in the ad section, if they can take up a prime spot in organic listings, if they can take up a mapped location as well, and if one of their or two of their social media profiles or their Yelp profile, if they can get multiple of these things on the first page of Google for a search result, that is worth its weight in gold, just from the real estate aspect of you have way more of your properties on a search engine result page, which is going to give you a much bigger advantage in conversion. But the thing that's unquantifiable, and I think the thing that people don't think about nearly as often as they should, is you're actually also actively pushing your competitors out. So even if you have reached sort of a maxed occupancy, I think there's a ton of benefit to keeping some of these marketing programs going for the simple effect of keeping your competitors out of the mind of your potential customers, even if you are getting to sort of that upper limit of your occupancy, for example.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think that is important to mention, that you're capitalizing on the real estate, and by you being there, others aren't there.
Exactly.
I do want to be sensitive though, because of my operations background, and Melissa works with owners all the time. ALISON works with investors and owners all the time. There is, in my opinion, there is a threshold where I don't want to be paying $2,300 a month just to take up that real estate. And so Melissa or ALISON, any thoughts on kind of, what is that value add proposition of having both? Because there's a lot of value of having both in a lease up stage, when you've got units of all kinds, of all features to rent when that phone rings. But when is the tipping point where you start to steer your owners away from both and maybe just focus on SEO, which is the most cost efficient long-term strategy?
Go ahead, Alison.
Okay. I don't know what the exact threshold is, but I definitely do think that at a certain point you do want your if you're at your level of occupancy that you're creating the right returns, then I think that there is a certain point where you can kind of almost back off just a little bit, because that helps your competition. If they're in lease up, that helps them grow a little bit faster, then they can start increasing rental rates than you can. I mean, the market's only as healthy as your competition, and you don't want to hold anyone back. And obviously you don't want anyone holding you back. So it's kind of like, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, kind of.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. I love kind of that concept of when the water rises, all ships rise when the it gets higher. I just butchered that, but
rising tide lifts all ships. I use it all the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Melissa, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's normally an occupancy goal that we have for a facility, right? And usually, around 90%, even maybe slightly before that too, is when we'll start really looking at cutting the ads. And to Chuck's point, we never cut completely an ad if their occupancy. Usually in a market where we're running an ad, it's a highly competitive market. So we still want that real estate, to Chuck's point. The other thing too is it's to mention kind of that we've noticed is when we do cut our Google ad budgets, or even though we're doing the same thing in the long-term strategies there, our organic will drop as well. So just something to watch out too is that if you completely cut your ad budget, you might have some issues then as well with your organic, just because Google says it's not a factor, but I think we all agree that, you know, Google controls that page. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. I hope as a listener that helps you guys kind of understand creating a budget and at what point do you put X percentage into both SEO and PPC, and when can those percentages kind of tier out. We've got James back on the line, which is perfect timing because there's a question from the audience from Chip, and Chip asks, have any of you used billboards? Are they expensive, and do we get a good response from them? So James, Melissa, what do y'all think on that?
We're actually in the midst of actually looking into that for a local outreach for our new store. We haven't pulled the trigger yet. Our thought was if we do like a 6-month contract, it may be up there for a year or two before someone else moves their sign out of it. So it may be a longer ad than is actually on the contract. But we're trying to make sure that's simple, easy to read, because people are driving 40 to 70 miles an hour past it. So we're just trying to get more of a brand awareness. So I'm coming from a space where, again, we're more leasing up a store. So we're still trying to get found. So our goal is just to try to be a little bit of a guerrilla marketing out there. So we haven't done it yet, but I'd be glad to share it with the group once we do move forward, how that performs. But I haven't pulled that trigger quite yet.
Awesome. Good stuff. Melissa, do you guys use any billboards at your properties?
no, and we kind of talked about this with Facebook, right? When you have a limited budget and you're trying to decide how to apply that, you really want to do with intent. For us, billboards just have a very, very, very little ROI for us. We much rather spend that budget in a place where we know that we're going to capture an actual rental versus that brand awareness.
Great feedback. Chuck or Allison, have you guys used billboards maybe in your current role or past roles?
Not a ton, but I basically agree with everything that's been said so far. Really, billboard is something where, if all of your cylinders are firing the way they should, if you've been in the business for a while, if you've just got a ton of extra money burning a hole in your pocket, if you've dotted all your I's up until this point, then yeah, that can be a good way to kind of sort of take it a little bit further. I definitely think there's some sort of really good sort of downwind branding effects of billboard. But generally speaking, if budgets are tight, which, no one has unlimited money, if you're a new facility, things like that, I think you're going to get a much bigger return on investment much quicker from something, and obviously much more measurable from something like an AdWords or an SEO campaign just like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. You've got a lot of comments here that agree with us too. My only input as well, take it for what it is. We've got a couple of properties that are tucked away just a little bit off of an interstate or off of a main road, and they've got a billboard near them. And so we use that more as a direction or in some cases to navigate through some signage or just some it's a workaround through, what's the word? It just escaped me. But when the city doesn't let you put a sign up or doesn't let you put flutter flags up, ordinances. Yeah, thank you, Melissa. She's got my back. We'll use billboards in those examples, but it's less about the awareness because they are hard to track. It's hard to create an ROI on those, and it's more for clear visibility that here's a storage facility. We also have another great question from Mark. Speaking of ROI, he's asking, what is your favorite way to track ROI on your marketing efforts? And I'll add to that, what are some of the KPIs that you look at?
Hi, Mark. How are you? I'll jump in. I would just work out an attribution model and sort of just determine how that's going to work. There are, I think, like 7 different kinds. And so you can do, the very first touch or the last touch or a linear. It can be a time decay. And so just kind of, Grace, to what you were saying earlier, it takes 7 different times for someone to really recognize your brand. And then who knows if they're trusting it at that point. Like, recognition isn't always a good thing. And so I would say develop that plug that in Google Analytics, and that way you can actually see the true conversion, and that'll also just help you determine, your costs as a whole, and then what contributes. Maybe it's not a true conversion every single time, but it might contribute to that end result. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
That's awesome, Allison. Great feedback there using Google Analytics.
I'd actually like to add a little bit to that. That was a perfect answer, but I'd also like to add, also think about the timeframes that you're looking at it too for ROI. So you have your data, you're using analytics, you're using attribution models, but to take it another step further, really think about the timeframes that you're looking at this data. A great example of this, and this is something I have to wrestle with all the time, is that every business, every industry, they all have their yearly highs and their yearly lows. No industry is outside of this dichotomy. So if you were to start, for example, a big marketing campaign in Q3, let's say you're doing SEO, and let's say your rankings tremendously improved during Q3, but Q4 is your yearly low for your service, your industry, you're certainly going to see a dip in your user engagement metrics through Q4. Now, if you're looking year over year, it'll be very clear what the growth is, and that's really what you should be focusing on in that instance, is that year over year growth. So you always want to try whenever you can, try to baseline what your previous numbers were, because if you are making a big marketing investment, doing something like PPC or SEO, and you're starting Q3, Q4, you could be getting way more visitors and more engagement than you were the year before. You could be getting way more market share than your competitors are getting. But if you're just locked into that month over month view, you could really lose sight of the forest to the trees, as you would see a natural decline. But of course, you would see that decline anyway, but you're getting more than you would otherwise. So make sure you're tracking it, analytics, using attributions, but then also keep in mind the timescales that you're looking at as well.
Awesome. Melissa, what are some of the key performance indicators you've got?
Yeah, definitely. And to go off of Chuck too, I think, looking at your trends is the best way to show that. But I just wanted to mention, both of you talked about digital, but when you want to track the local as well, that's a lot tougher, right? But really training, your managers, or having it, if you have an unmanned facility, having it come up and really asking the customer where you heard about us, and then tying that back into your spend. And then we use BI tools to kind of help us track that ROI as well, from all of those different sources. But for KPIs, we're looking at cost per conversion. We're looking at, number of rentals from a source, all of those kind of ones that we've already talked about as well. But definitely the ROI is one big one that we really concentrate on too.
James, anything to add here?
Actually, it might be a question for the panel, but one thing that we track too is like, we try to add a video, or try to add a photo of our facility once a week on Google's business page to stay active. So part of our KPIs is our managers update a photo once a week. And then we also track our Google reviews on a weekly basis. How many are we adding each week to make sure that organically we're getting a higher ranking, but we're also showing Google that we're an active business. So I don't know if there's any feedback from the panel if we're doing the right thing, but that's what I was told at one point. So we've been tracking it ever since, but more of an organic approach with those two items.
Yeah, I think if I can just answer that, and then we'll move on. We've got one more question I want to get in before we have to wrap up, and Jessica boots us off. I think that if you have the bandwidth to add a picture a week on Google Business Profile, that is awesome. That is super great. We try to do it once every 60 days, something like that, kind of similar, to make sure that profile stays active. And then one of the KPIs that we measure is how many move-ins did we have compared to how many new reviews did we have. And that way we can normalize that data, and you're spot on. It helps at least keep that SEO profile that you're creating online, keep it active and relevant. I'm looking at Chuck for a confirmation nod there.
More or less, yes.
Awesome, more or less. That'll get us there. The last question I really want to ask the panel is, a lot of these owners that are listening here do not have dedicated marketing departments, let alone a dedicated full-time marketing team member. And so we talked about a lot of levers, a lot of things, both online and offline, that comprise or make up your marketing budget. And so what tools can you guys share with these owners that they can use and leverage and make the most of their time?
I think a great place to start is going to be Google Analytics. That's going to cover a lot of the stuff that was mentioned today. It's a free tool from Google. That's going to cover, measuring your traffic coming in from various sources. You can do some really cool attribution things with that. Two more free tools I would recommend really quickly are obviously going to be Google AdWords tool. There, you'll be able to see a lot of good information and reverse engineer a lot of good information about sort of what are the most competitive phrases in your area, what's sort of the going prices for certain key phrases, things like that. And then finally, I would also like to recommend google.com/trends. And that's what I was mentioning earlier when I was looking at and talking about sort of yearly highs and yearly lows. That's a really great tool to figure out sort of when the sort of busy season will be for you and also when the low season will be as well. And so I like to use that tool a lot to actually help inform what we're going to be doing for marketing down the line as well. Thank you. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. James, because you're a social guru, do you use any posting tools or scheduling tools?
Well, first of all, Charlie, that was great. I mean, I everything you said is very important to track and use. So kudos to you, and I appreciate the trends idea too. I don't think I've actually heard of that yet. So definitely look into that. I was just going to mention, I think all of us have friends that are on social media, and some friends post more than others. So I found my friend's wife always posting things about her life. Well, I got her to join our team as a very, very small amount per post, where she's already on Facebook. She now posts for Storco Storage because she likes what she does. So we might have somebody in our back pocket that we already know within our circle that we can hire someone's wife or mom that's already staying at home with their kids. They could post a couple times a week, organically continue to improve our appearance. We talked about the 7 touches. That's a couple of the steps along the way, touches that our clients have us. So be thinking about your local reach, that you can use somebody to help you post online that's already natural and they like doing it. So just a little shout out for our local stay-home moms and people who have already posting on Facebook.
Moms or dads. That's really creative. Last minute, Melissa or Allison, any additional tools to jump in here with?
I was going to say call Chuck.
Yeah, just if you're using like a platform to manage your reviews, usually they also have the social posting as well. So you can leverage, one platform to do all of that for you as far as pulling your reviews and answering them and your social calendar. So we use reputation.com if you're looking for a tool like that.
I just got one more, and it's Hotjar. If you really need help with your website, it shows you like a heat map of where people are looking at it, where they're falling off the page. Stuff like that is just super helpful. And I want to say there's a free trial, so when you bring that online, you're ready to go. Sorry, Jess. Okay.
That's awesome.
No, you're good. And let me throw in a point out there too for owners and operators that feel like marketing might not be their strong suit or skill set. There are services that you can hire, just like Storable does digital marketing services. So this is not something that you feel like you need to do all on your own. There's plenty of great marketing services out there within the industry that can help you with this, help you understand it, help the analytics, etc. Man, I feel like this, us marketing people like to talk a lot, right? So I feel like this could have been a 2-hour panel and that the audience would not have dropped off at all. So thank you everyone so much for being here. Before we wrap up, I'm going to remove everybody off screen real quick. I want to show you guys something new and exciting that the SBOA is offering. You saw it here first. That's right. We have a new educational series called Storage for Rookies. The founders of the SBOA have been around doing this for well over 20 some years now. So we have bought, purchased, acquired, built, sold quite the portfolio of well over 100 locations. So we feel that we have a pretty good footprint in this space, and we want to help teach you to not make the same mistakes that we made early in the phases of getting started in self-storage. So we started a new program, Storage for Rookies. Our next one is next Thursday. It is 12 to 5. It is a virtual event just like this. To learn more about that program, please go to storageforrookies.com. And we'll see everyone hopefully again in 2 weeks for our next free self-storage unlocked. This one is Get Ready to Spring into the High Lease Season, a survival guide to ensure you are ready. We have some other great industry experts coming to speak with us during that session. So please go ahead. The registration will be up on the SBOA website later today. Hope to see everyone at ISS. I know Storable that was here today, ASM, Store Track and List Self-Storage, Storage Asset Management. All of us will be there in attendance. We all have booths. I would rattle all of that off to you, but we've unfortunately ran out of time. So just visit the ISS Expo 2022 website or app to learn more information about that great event. And we hope to see you all there. Again, see you hopefully next week. If you're a newer owner and operator, which I saw one in the audience today, so I expect you to be at Storage for Rookies next week. 2 weeks after that, come back for another self-storage unlock. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Go drink some beer. Peace out.